Now, we looked at the filters pane. This is your filters pane here. The filter pane allows you to filter by page, by report, by visual, a number of filtering options. But there are other ways to filter, and a very popular way is to employ a slicer. And so on your visualizations pane, there is actually this button here called Slicer. And if I click it, make sure I've got nothing selected, just click on my report canvas, hit Slicer, there it is there. And then I have to drag what field I want to use as a way of filtering or slicing. And that would be year. So I'm dragging year either into this field bucket or into the visual itself. And there's my year. Now let me just stretch it. Now a slicer can have three different sorts of layouts or types. A slicer can be a range, and that's what we're looking at here, or a slicer can be a drop down, which is very, very common because it doesn't take up a lot of space, or a slicer could be a list. How do you change the slicer? Well, let's first of all look at this. This is the numeric slicer, and I can drag this and make this range come in, and look at all my figures adjusted. And I can drag this side and drag that in, and how all the figures adjusted. Or I can interact directly with this and type in a number, and everything's affected. So that's sort of a range. I find that quite loose and not quite what I'm after. So if I want to change it, this little drop down here, select the type of slicer. If I hit that drop down, I can say, well, actually, I just want less than or greater than. But I actually prefer to have drop down. And drop down doesn't take up much space, see, because now I can make it smaller. And it's a drop down where I can choose whichever year I want to report, that year, or that year, or that year, or hold the control key, that year and that year and that year. So the control key lets me choose more than one. Or if I click, I've unselected everything, click to select, click to unselect, and I go back to saying all. So that's the other type of slicer, but the third type is a list. So I'm going to hit this drop down to change the type of slicer to a list. Now a list is pretty cool, but it takes up space. So there is a list of all the years, and if I wanted, say, 2020, then I would select 2020 or 2021 or 2022 or unselect 2022, and I'm back to all again. So there's three different types of slicers. I think for this particular page, I would like it to just be a drop down. So I'm going to hit this V and change it to a drop down because it takes so little space. Resize it, and then I'm just going to pop it in this top corner here. And this is telling me with those red dotty lines that I'm through the center of those continent images, and I'm through the center of those images that are in a vertical column. So that's a good way to see how I'm placed on the page. Okay, so we've created a slicer, it's a drop down slicer, and we've positioned it in the top right corner. Now the next thing I want to do is look at formatting that particular slicer. And so I'm just checking my notes. All right, so what I want to do is first of all format the background. So I've got my slicer chosen, I go to my visualizations pane and I choose format your visual. I search for background because I can't be bothered trying to find it in amongst all those options. Here's the values background, title background, effects background. I'm actually wanting the values background. So I'm going to change that to white but 10% darker. And so that's affected the color of the values drop down portion of the actual slicer. I would also like to have a background color. So I'm going to go also white 10% darker. And that's the color of the entire slicer. Though you can go for different colors and try different things. I could either make the transparency 100% so it blends, and in fact put this back to white and do that sort of thing. The other thing I want to do is I want the select all option. So instead of background, I'm going to put select all. And so I want to be able to turn that on, because at the moment, when I hit this drop down, let's have a look. You can see the years in here, but at the top of the list, there's no select all option. I have to know to click it and to unclick it to get all. Some people aren't going to relate. So what I'm going to do is turn that on. And so now when I hit the drop down, there's an option at the top, select all. And people will relate to that better. Let me just stretch this bit so you can see better. And so there's the select all option. So that I want to turn on. Now I also want to affect the title at the top here and be a little bit more descriptive. So I'm just going to clear that select all in the search box, and I want to choose slicer header. And in the slicer header, I want to give it the title, not just year, but I want to tell them to select year, and in brackets at the end I'll put S. So they can select year or years, which might make them realise they can use the control key. Or you could actually add that to your title if you wanted to. I also want to change, I want to apply a little bit of a shadow, so I'm going to type shadow, and I'll turn that on, and so that's given a little bit of a shadow behind it. And the other thing I want to search for is the units, and it didn't find it, so display unit, didn't find it. That's a bit annoying. And so I have to go into values, and I know that it's in here somewhere. Sorry, my bad. The display units is not with reference to the slicer, it's with reference to the card. So let me just cross that out. I'm going to click on this card, and then if I go format the visual and I type, though I do know it's under call out, unit, there it is there. And so I could actually then say I want to see this not in auto but in billions. And so that's showing me these figures here in billions. In fact, if I click this and hold the shift key and select all of them, I should be able to change all of them to billions. And so they're showing me billions as a unit, though you could say, look, show me trillions, or show me millions. You can display the unit. I'm going to go back to billions, cross that off, click my report canvas, and the method of my madness is because when I go here and I say, actually, I just want 2000, the year 2000, so much data, then they show me in billions. Or the year 2020, maybe bring it more forward, then those are the figures in billions for the year 2020. So those are some of the formatting options that you can apply. And I'm going to save my file so I don't lose any of that work.